Welcome to the Atypical Intentions podcast. This is a basketball podcast, but it's more than that. It's talking about why we play basketball, how we get better at basketball from the mental side, and honestly, just kind of hearing some thoughts about what it takes to get better in life. I'm Kyle. I'm your random co-host. I'm the new guy.
And I'm Trey. I would say the founder of Atypical and current 7-year professional basketball player. I have a passion for pushing the game forward in what I see the correct direction. I think there's a lot of people in this space. I think there's a lot of people in the youth development that don't have good intentions and teach things that prioritize athletes' development less than winning. That's
Yeah.
that's the ill of society that we're trying to cure from this podcast. We're on a quest to just absolutely dismantle the toxic coaches, the win at all costs guys, the basketball is the most important thing in the world. Those guys are our mortal enemies. So if that's you, we're coming for you.
Coming for you. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the development thing and the on the guy who's putting up 50 on a team that's losing by 50. It's not it's a culture thing that it's like, well, as long as I'm good, as long as my stats look good, then therefore I'll be fine, right?
Yeah.
And maybe like there are certain circumstances where you have to put up stats because you're on a team that doesn't have the opportunity to have those stats be put up. Um, but yeah, I actually think it's a really good segue because we were talking about this off camera, but we are talking about how this injury is probably the most aggressive injury of your career and how this would have completely ruined even first year pro Trey. So I think it's a good topic because you also put up some crazy stats your first year overseas. So if you were to put yourself in first year Trey's shoes dealing with this injury, kind of what are some things that you would be struggling with? And what
Yeah.
are things you would tell that person now? Like, this is how you get over it.
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think if people don't know, if listeners don't know, I essentially the backstory of this injury. So I'm in my 7th year as a pro. I started the season. I was in Lithuania, um, playing in the Euro Cup as well. Second highest league outside of second highest league in Europe. I'd say probably third best league in the world. You got the NBA, Euro League, then Euro Cup's probably right. Yeah, probably that's where I'd place it. But went in for surgery, or basically knee got worse and worse. Went in for surgery. It was supposed to be a small 2-month rehab, little cleanup. Turned out to be devastating surgery. Had to get double microfracture, get my meniscus repaired. It had 3 tears, so 9 stitches, and all that jargon to say the recovery time 6 to 9 months. And when you're playing overseas, when basketball is your living, when you get injured like that, and also some nuances in my contract, my income goes to zero. So it affects more than just my ability to play basketball. It affects my family's livelihood. It affects my livelihood. So super intense compared, especially to, obviously, I would say obstacles and trauma and these things are all relative, but relative to the rest of my career, this is by far the most, the word would probably be damning injury that has happened to me. And you asked the question, how would I have reacted at the start of my pro career? We could take it even further. How would I have reacted in high school? And I have like examples of how I did react. So, for example, before my senior year of high school basketball, when every kid wants to get a scholarship, every kid is dreaming about playing in the NCAA tournament, all that stuff. I had like an avulsion fracture of my pelvis. I speak in all these medical terms because I've had so many injuries. But when that happened to me, it was chaos internally. I had zero perspective. I thought life was over. Um, I thought I could just outwork the rehab. I was going to conquer this thing. I was going to just take it head on and just dominate this injury recovery because nothing would stand in between me and my goals. And that perspective is what a lot of young athletes have, and that leads to re-injury, which of course I've had that same thing in college. I broke the same foot 3 times because I didn't learn from that. Um, so there's all these things that encompass a setback, right? And as you, as I've gotten deeper into my career, as I've worked so hard on my emotional intelligence and my perspective through hard times. The reason being for doing that was not just to conquer the hard times, but that's a key element of performance. You have to be able to, because think of a game. Every missed shot, that's essentially a setback or negative feedback. It's like, how do you respond to those moments? And so I realized in me, if I wanted to be a consistent basketball player, and remember in my profession, consistency pays. So if I wanted to get from this salary number to this salary number, consistency had to be, I had to be consistency embodied. So with all that work and understanding now, I've basically faced the hardest injury rehab of my career. And I'm taking it with so much more grace and understanding and perspective that there's more to life than basketball. That these experiences that that basketball brings, it's like a sandbox for life, because you experience a setback in basketball. Yes, that's terrible. Especially when basketball is so interlinked in our identity as athletes, as basketball players, it can be really hard to digest. But what happens in life when something much greater happens? You lose a family member, you lose your job, a relationship doesn't work out, you have a falling out with a friend. There's so much more that can happen in life and so much greater setbacks, that now I take this setback with more grace, understanding that it's preparing me for life. If my wife saw me and my peers and the people that in my relationship saw me handle this with just frustration and I was down, it's like, can they count on me when they have one of those moments? Am I going to be available for them? So, long-winded ramble, but essentially, you can't outrun problems. You're always going to face problems. The only thing you can do is get more efficient at solving them and operate from a more grounded headspace so that your solutions are more calculated, more rooted in reality, I would say.
Yeah, that's a very eloquent answer. So there's two things that really like jump to mind. I like to think of intention or even motivation as something that, as you grow, goes from being crude to refined, right? Like when you're a high school student and you're thinking, I want to play in the NCAA, I want to play in March Madness, all these things, your motivations for those are typically not pure. It's like, I want to prove everyone wrong. I want fame. I want success. I want this certain lifestyle. I want the girl. I want the guy, whatever. Right. And that's okay for a season. It's okay to be driven by this proving yourself. It's okay to want to conquer an injury when you're a junior in high school. Like it's fine. Right. But you have to outgrow it, right? You have to reach the end of that motivation and look at it and be like, if I treated this injury like I treated my injury as a high school student, it would like tear your family apart.
Yep.
Right? You'd be like, you have a pregnant wife right now. And if you were very much like, what about me when your hip was hurt? And she's like, I'm carrying our child. And you're like, you're making our whole life about you. Like, that's not fair. That's not right. That's the first thing that I thought of. And then the second thing I thought of is efficiency is not speed. I think that when we think of efficiency, we think of this is the fastest and best way possible to do it. It is just the best way possible, right? There's this idea in like Navy SEAL culture, which is slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And when you say efficiently, you're not talking about getting on the court this season or like tomorrow. You're talking about once I get on the court, I will be best prepared to perform and do my job. Yep. And I think those two things are like massive life lessons. And yeah, let's get nerdy about it. Let's talk about your rehab right now. Let's talk about what you're going through to ultimately come back a more refined version of the basketball player that you were before you got hurt.
Yeah, I think I so I've been trying to. I get a lot of people reaching out to me as I've been going through this injury rehab and kind of documenting the journey. I post daily journals. I post my daily workouts. I try and share some of my mindset things that are going on throughout this process. And I've been talking with a lot of guys that have been going through similar injuries. And a lot of the times, what I hear is the world, like, it's this operating from a space of despair rather than hope. And before we get into the nitty gritty, it's just that is the key, I would say, when attacking any obstacle is operating from a space there is a light at the end of the tunnel rather than focusing so nearsighted on the darkness around you. I'd say that's one of the biggest perspective shifts I've had, and that kind of hits on what your first point of like wanting it to go fast rather than wanting it to go the best way possible. And we think, like you said, efficient is fast, but a lot of times efficient is navigating that dark tunnel in the most direct path you can. That doesn't mean sprinting it. That means you could just walk it, but that may save you more time than running in circles trying to find that
Absolutely.
exit, trying to find that solution. So that was the last thing on the mindset part, real quick on that perspective. But so as for my rehab right now, it's tough, and when a lot of guys have injuries, injuries vary a lot in how severe in rehab protocols and all these things. But the toughest part is that in any rehab program, pain is your guide, right?
Hmm.
And the tough part is what is good pain and what is bad pain. And so for these first six, or I think I'm on week 7, it's just been navigating what pain is what. What pain is necessary and what pain is setting me back. And so as I do these rehab workouts, I relearn how to walk. I start to strengthen the muscles around my surgically repaired knee. What is good pain and what is bad pain, right? And the injury itself too, with microfracture, it's very quick little stabs of pain. All of a sudden, no pain. Okay, pain with this movement, pain not with this movement. There's so many just different dynamics and forces that go into your knee. Um, and so it's been like a constant, okay, try this exercise. Okay, it hurts in this range of motion. Adjust, maybe put a band so that my hip and glute is activated more to avoid tibia rotation. It's just this constant problem solving, and it's very exhausting. But this is what I always tell athletes when they're going through injuries. You have to have this curiosity, this problem solving mindset when it comes to your injury, because the doctor's going to tell you do A, B, C, D. And maybe I'll tell you on a short form, do these knee exercises to help with your patella tendonitis. Okay, but you're not me. Your body responds differently to that exercise than me. So you have to, and it's exhausting, but constantly put your awareness in that injury um, while you're doing those specific strengthening exercises, those movement exercises. Um, and of course, then there's a time when you're trying to become unconscious, so you add other stimulus, which is what I've been integrating the past week or so. Started to do some Bulgarian split squats to really like load my knee, my quad. And what I've added to that is I tried just dribbling a basketball while I'm doing those. So instead of cognitive or like being cognitive of how that knee's moving and all this stuff, if I'm retraining this pattern of movement that basically is the reason for my injuries because they're overuse injuries. How do I not, because when you're playing basketball, you're not thinking, okay, cut, and I'm going to press on this outside leg, and I'm not going to let my knee flare out, and that's not realistic. So you have to train that. And basically the way is I get that ball bouncing so that it's a mental stimulus. I'm focused on making sure I'm handling the basketball while I'm getting that strengthening work. And it's just a way to move the awareness without having to be so intentional about it. Um, But yeah, there's just so many things that go into, an injury rehab, and like we can just start listing them off. You have your nutrition, um, you have your supplementation. That's been something I've been diving into some as well, and then of course you have your mindset. I think like both mine and yours, the passion behind this podcast is to dial in that mindset because that is what shapes the whole recovery. And yeah, I'm not sure I went too nitty gritty, but I always revert back to that mindset because the nitty gritty doesn't matter. Like the exercises you do, I swear, they don't matter that much. Your intention behind the exercise and your mind and what you're focusing on while you're doing the exercise is always going to have outsized return to the actual exercise you're doing.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I think that like, first and foremost, the way that you talk is like, it's a gold mine. Like there's so many like things in there. So I'm going to keep like having multiple points on what you say. So have you heard about this situation with Brandon Ayuk? Have you seen
No,
this situation?
no, no.
So Brandon Ayuk holds out in the offseason to get a good deal, to get his contract, right? Good. Get your money, do your thing, you're a professional athlete. A couple games in the season, tears his ACL. At the beginning of a 4-year, 120 million guaranteed contract, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All he has to do is be a part of the team. Go to team meetings, go to the facility to do your rehab, do the things that you're supposed to do. Do your job, right? Like when you get injured, you don't just stop having a job, right?
Yep.
You are still a professional athlete. You're just an injured professional athlete. It just
Yep.
the day to day is different, but you're still an athlete, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he stops going to team meetings. He stops going to mandatory workouts. He stops responding to his teammates' text messages, his coach text messages, the trainers. It just completely ghosts an entire organization, right?
It's wild.
They had to void his contract. They voided his $21 million guaranteed deal for this year because he's not doing his job. And it's like this idea of like guaranteed money and how you're putting your body in the line. That's fantastic. But you still have to do the bare minimum to earn your money.
Yeah.
And Kyle Shanahan was asked about it in this interview. And he goes, this is the first time I've ever had someone's contract voided. Like, this is the first time. And it's like, obviously, I am a player first fan. Whenever someone does anything to protect their body or protect their mind, I'm like, do it, right? Money is not worth it. Yeah. This is not that. This is a mindset issue. This is you are not a professional. You are somebody who has the capabilities of a professional, but when it comes down to it, you are not being a professional. And when you're not being a professional, you don't deserve to get paid, right? That's the game.
Yeah. Like real quick, that's such a good point because you hear all the time in the business world, and you hear it growing up as an athlete, like, oh, companies love to hire athletes. Okay, why do they like to hire them? They know how to work in a team, they know how to compete, they know how to produce, right? But at the end of the day, if you're not using your sport as something to propel your professionalism, propel who you are as and how you interact, and that mindset, you're unhireable. Like
Unhireable.
Because you were really good at one thing and didn't allow that one thing to expand you a skill set that would make you good at almost everything.
Yeah.
And that's just that's just been something on my mind just because with the injury, like life's thrown at my face, and I'm like, okay, let's say I have to get a normal job. What would that look like? What would that job search look like? And I'm like, I feel good about it because I feel like I'm a high value person because I've allowed sports to propel that. But this Brandon Ayuk guy, dude, he's cooked. Like that's like the worst thing on your resume possible. Imagine going, hey, he's going to Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and they won't hire him because they're like, dude, you voided your 21 million contract because you didn't want to do the job. It's like, what are we doing here? Yeah. What are we doing here?
Yeah, and so then the last thing on the Brandon Ayuk thing, there's this kind of like pseudo sob story of Odell Beckham Jr. on a podcast. He goes, it's a lot harder to make $100 million last the rest of your life than you think it is. And it's like, okay, relax. First and foremost, relax. But he was like, he made a decent point. He said, you're living a lifestyle. So you get 100 million, 50 million just gone to taxes, right? So you have 50
Mm-hmm.
million bucks. Still unbelievable amount of money. I would be very happy to have that kind of money, right? But then that $50 million has to supply you for the rest of your life if you don't plan on having a career after football, which is with $50 million, why would you? But you think about the house you bought your mom, the car you bought your buddy, the X, Y, and Z, right? So if you have if you're all burn, you have no cash flow, you're all burn, and your life costs you $3-4 million a year, you're going to make it 12 years, right? You're going to make it 12 years on your money. And that's not thinking about just putting in the S&P 500 and collecting your 7% yield and making you'd make what, $3.5 million a year on 7%. I think you'd be fine.
Yeah.
But you don't, when you're somebody who's not willing to show up to do your ACL rehab, you're also not the person to put your money into an ETF. Like it's just like
Right.
it's the conversion of the discipline of I am someone who's willing to do the work when the work is present, and also I'm going to take care of this thing and so on and so forth. That's a bit of a tangent. The next thing I want to talk about is I don't know the actual term for it, the scientific educational term for it, but I call it root focused learning. So the biggest issue that I have with basketball training, and my highest basketball level is JV. So I'm not like a goat here.
Hey, listen, you were a swing player.
I was a swing player. I'd practice the varsity squad.
Wait. Do we get into the story of how I took your jersey?
We'll talk about that later.
Okay,
But root focused learning, the issue with basketball right now is you have all these trainers who are putting cones out and they're having kids do tween cross, step back pull ups, right? Mm-hmm. And then you'll see the tween cross looks great, and then they're pulling up like this.
Yeah.
You know, they're pulling up and they're throwing. For those who are listening, a high elbow, and the ball's going. It's like the Lonzo Ball shot, right? Like, and we know that Lonzo Ball didn't care about that jumper because his jumper doesn't look like that anymore, right?
Yeah.
We know that wasn't just him being a natural hooper. That was him focusing on the leaves, not the roots. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that what you're talking about here is, and just to add one more wrinkle to that, with the way that you're training is you're learning about your body. In order to learn about your body, you have to learn about the human body. Mm-hmm. In order to learn about the human body, you have to learn about the parts and the pieces and how things work together, and how you can hack together a system that helps you make your system stronger. Yep. And when someone is saying, hey, what are your training? How do I fix this? Right? You are telling them your system to hack your body, right? Mm-hmm. But your body's different because you had to rehab from a hip injury, which means your hips are probably stronger than the average person. And so you don't have to worry about your hip strength for your knee as much as someone else might have to. Yeah. Which means it's not a part of your programming, which means it's not going to be helpful for somebody who has weak hips.
Yeah. I think the big thing you're hitting on too is one of my biggest complaints with the basketball development landscape right now is what gets views and what gets engagement are solutions. But it's solutions for the person making the video. And the solution is not always the answer for everybody. And young athletes, they're always searching for the next thing. But the disconnect is they get the thing and then they don't ask the why behind it when they apply it to their own development. And so you get young athletes copying exactly what pros do. Well, why is the pro doing that? Oh, it's because he's mastered A, B, and C. So he's earned the right to get there. I think you told me this quote. I forget where it was, but copy the rise, not the results, right? And I think it just rings true is social media, and the way to get engagement is you show the results. But the results is not what's going to get little Timmy at age 12 that's very underdeveloped to a college basketball player. You know what I'm saying? It's like there needs to be a progression and there needs to be a a mind that's being molded into learning rather than just I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. It's like, well, why? You know, and I think that concept that you were talking about earlier, this root based learning, applies to actual skill development, like you were saying, um, a ton because you see guys doing so many things that they were told to do and not getting out of it what the person telling them to do it was trying to get them to do, right? So is that a coaching problem? Is that a player issue? Just the communication is not clear, right? Um, yeah, I think, yeah, it's a really interesting, social media's adds such a wrinkle to it, right? Because there's this whole other dynamic. How multiplied your voice is often depends on how many people think it could help them. The people that are like taking it like I think it could help me don't understand what would actually help them. You know?
Absolutely. I think the key word that finishes off what you're saying is this idea of leverage, right? The person who copies someone else is just stealing a piece of that person's leverage, right?
Yeah.
So if I play like Trey, my first choice will always be to get Trey. I don't want
Yeah.
you because you play like Trey, right? I
Right.
want Trey. And if I can't have Trey, I will take the watered down version of Trey, right?
Yes.
But ultimately, when you learn something for yourself, when you learn why Trey does what he does in his body, and then you say, I can take a piece of that, but this is going to work better for my game, my life, my system, then you are just leveraging something that someone else has, and you're making yourself leverageable.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about getting paid overseas, right? We were talking about how there's two big kind of pay thresholds and how you passed one pay threshold, but you didn't pass the second one, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about why you were able to pass the first one is because you had leverage, right? You averaged an efficiency on all three levels of the court, offense
Mm-hmm.
and defense,
Mm-hmm.
that showed that you were somebody who was worth overcoming that pay barrier. And the power of that is that you have leverage in every role that a team needs, right? If they need a 3-and-D guy, you shoot a high enough percentage on threes and you play good enough defense that you can get paid for that role. If they need a secondary playmaker and someone who can go get a hard bucket, like you can do that. If they need just a true defense and kind of like a leader in the locker room, you've proven you can be that, right?
Yep.
You have leverage in multiple roles that will get you paid. Like at the end of the day, that's the goal, right? The goal is to get paid and put your team in winning positions. That's it. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that's
I think it's,
yeah.
yeah,
Your
I think
thoughts?
it's super interesting too. Like you talk about another person's leverage compared to your leverage, and you steal things from other players, but you don't try and emulate them exactly, right? And the common question, I'll get asked this on interviews, or you'll hear young kids ask me this, like, who did you emulate your game after, right? And I never have an answer for it because that wasn't my process of learning. I didn't just take one guy and be like, I want to be like him. And even you hear some NBA players, like some of the young guys, I tried to be exactly, or like Kobe, I tried to be exactly like Jordan, stuff like this, and that worked for them, because they had this incredible talent, and so it just translated. But the greats, I would say the people that improve the fastest aren't the ones that copy. They don't copy one archetype. They take pieces from everything. They're learning from every experience. They watch Luka, how he stops on his step back. They watch LeBron, how he's always communicating on defense. They watch Jokic and where his eyes are scanning on the floor. There's pieces you take from everything, and then you apply it to your own game. If I'm going to take Jokic's court vision, I don't get a lot of passes out of the post. So am I just going to be like, oh, what's he reading in the post? This isn't. No, it's like, okay, when he's scanning in transition, where is he looking? It's like you have to see greats and see players that you aspire to be and see the moves they do in those moments and see how it applies to your own current circumstance. It's like if I'm a high school freshman on JV and I'm studying how to read the second defender in a pick and roll, probably the defense you're playing against doesn't even know what that second defender is. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing?
You're trying to convince your coach to run a Spain pick and roll, and they're like, just score the ball, dude.
They're like, yeah, it's like we don't even know how to set a correct screen with the correct angle yet, and we're talking about this advanced thing. It's like, I'm not an old head that says, hey, we need to master the basics. I think there's a time and place where your training should be chaotic and well above your developmental level. There's time and purpose for that. I don't think we should just rep out one dribble pull-ups. But I do think the emphasis should be on the foundation in more chaotic environments. So I think the more chaotic environment you put yourself in training, it allows you to adapt faster, but you need someone that is constructing that environment to kind of encourage the skills we want to develop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. Sure. You go.
I was going to say, of course, we got into, some dense training philosophies quick, but that's kind of my MO when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, dude. I mean, so it's like, so once again, layers. The first thing is Jordan and Kobe are like elite at two things, right? Scoring and defense. They were top of their position in those two things. And they were good at playmaking if they needed to, but they didn't necessarily need to. They were scorers and they were defenders. Like, that's what they did, right? Mm-hmm. Something that's very specific about your skill set is that you are not necessarily elite at any one thing. You are above average at everything on the court, right? Which is indicative of the fact that you didn't copy someone else. But that's the way that you play basketball, right? Like, you are someone who, your goal is to find an advantage in something, right? It's like, okay, I have to lean into hustle. I'm going to lean into hustle, right? I think there was a time in Germany where you were leading guards and rebounds or something like that. Or maybe it was in Poland, but like that's all basketball is. Everyone talks about the 3-point revolution. They talk about the pick and roll. They talk about ISOs or whatever it is, right? The whole purpose of an offense is to manufacture an advantage. That's it, right? Yeah. And so if that means that you have a Kobe level scorer who can just get him the ball and run away, then you get him the ball and you run away. That's the advantage. That's your advantage. Right. Yeah. And so all training is, and all mindset is how do you manufacture an advantage in life, right? Mm-hmm. Is your advantage in life that you're able to consistently get up 30 minutes before everyone else and go to the gym and you're there when it's empty? Is that your advantage? Is your advantage that you're able to overcome injuries and you have mental fortitude, right? Mm-hmm. It's all about forming this advantage in a way that lifts you up and makes you a better person. Yeah. Because when it comes to teamwork, whether it's sport or not, the goal is to get talented, but also the best people, right? I want a room that I know when everything goes wrong, I have the type of person in that room that can help me overcome it, regardless if they have the IQ horsepower or they have 45-inch vertical. I want somebody who's just gonna be willing to stick it out, you know? And that's that's a skill. That's not that's not like an inherited trait. Yeah.
And I keep going back to this, but this idea of what young athletes consume, right? They're consuming people telling them what they should do. And they take it as, oh, this is what I should be doing. And it creates this manic, like, am I not doing enough? Am I doing, you start kind of like freaking out, like you're seeing a guy waking up at 4 a.m. and you're like, oh, I need to wake up at 4 a.m. or else he's going to be better than me. But in reality, you need to look at all the things you're consuming at. These are things I could do. And that's the big differentiator, because you have all these options. And then you have to see, okay, of all these things I could do, what are the things that will move the needle for me and my development? And sometimes it helps having a coach that's kind of like pushing you through that, as long as you're on the same kind of like wavelength on where you want to get to. But it really starts with you. Because when I was in high school, coming from our high school, Cedar Park Christian, I didn't have an example of someone who went and played college basketball, went and played pro basketball. I had that idea of myself. So I didn't have someone telling me, hey, this is what you should do if you want to go pro. I didn't have, this is what, I just said, okay, these are all the things I could possibly do to get better. I'm going to do these things, and, I'm going to reflect after, a couple months, did I get better? And of course, when you're younger, those time periods are longer. I would do a drill for, I'd see something and I'd do it for 6 months, and then, okay, I got better. Okay, cool. You also have the benefit of puberty, so you're getting
Yeah.
better, faster. Your body's developing just naturally. But now as a pro, I get, I've seen just about, I've seen the majority of things I could do to get better.
Yeah.
So now it's picking and choosing and finding the things that will move the needle for me right now. So it's been hard because the things that would move the needle when I'm healthy and help my game feel crisp and help me feel more primed to perform and help me feel like I can make those strides in my own development are not the things that are moving the needle now. So for example, I went to the gym the other day and I was like, you know what? I'm the first time touching a basketball in like 6 weeks, and I was like, dude, I can't wait, man. I'm gonna get in there, start shooting. And then my buddy Mitch got there. We started shooting together, and I was like, dude, like I would love to just shoot for the next hour, like. And then I just had to just say, hey, man, Mitch, you gotta shoot by yourself. This isn't gonna move the needle for me. Me shooting for an hour is not gonna help me get closer to being on the court. And that hurt because a lot of times, of all the things you could do, the things that you need to do are not what you want to do. So
Yeah.
you're just like, dude, it's the same in you know, in the business world, in running your own business. It's like a lot of things that you need to do are not what you want to do, and you could do so many other things to occupy your time, and that's probably why what you want is not happening. Uh,
Well, I mean, um, to the business example, if you are spending your time doing the thing that like, if you're spending your time doing the thing that got you to start the business all of the time, then you're probably failing as a business.
yep.
Most likely. Like, if you are not able to differentiate the importance of all the other tasks that go into a business, right? My guess is that people don't get into business to set up their books or to pay compliance fees or to maybe, I mean, I guess like content is an example. Like, I don't like making content. So I have to make content to tell you why you should buy my thing, but I don't like making content. I like the making of my thing, but I spend more time talking about how you should buy it than I do actually making my thing. And there's this really like powerful idea that doing things you like is not discipline. If you like being the first in the gym and you like working out for an hour and a half, you are not being disciplined.
For sure.
What is being disciplined is like, I would love to put up 300 jumpers right now, but I actually need to go and do my band work. That's discipline, right? That it's the doing the thing that you should do rather than doing the thing that you want to do is discipline.
Sure.
And I was actually having this conversation today. The discipline for the sake of discipline is not discipline. It's movement, right? Like, if you're like being masochistic and you're just not giving yourself any level of joy in your life and for the sake of some goal, that's not actually making you better. That's like you lack discipline in being disciplined. It's like you have to live still. And there's this whole line here, and I'm glad that we're gonna have more than one podcast to talk about it, but
Right.
it is the black hole of development is that you'll never be perfect. So there's theoretically always something else that you could do, right? Like for me, like if I wanted to play in the NBA, the first thing I'd have to do is go get leg lengthening surgery, right? I would have to go figure out a way to make myself 6'5". And that would be the first thing that I have to do.
That'd be a rehab, man.
Yeah, I think it takes like 2 years. And then I have to fight the fact that I would be 33 when I was ready to play. Starting the career with your highest level is JV at 33, like, yeah, it's just not going to happen, right?
Yeah. I had this really interesting conversation with this young hooper. He's Division I player. He was going to be a freshman this year. Had an injury flare up, and basically his season's over. I hopped on a call with him, and he immediately started sending me the plans he made, his whole breakdown of recovery process, and reminded me a lot of myself early in my career. I would build out these extravagant plans, and if I followed them, I believed I would get to my result. And in the plan, there was, wake up at 7 a.m., go to the gym, get in my form shots, and not to disclose his whole injury, but it was his left wrist, so he could still shoot one-handed. And this kid's an unbelievable shooter, like one of the best I've seen for his age, like unbelievable. The main reason he's playing Division I basketball is he can shoot the crap out of the basketball, right? And in his plan, he had 30 minutes of flip form shots in the morning, and I was like, all I said to him is why are you doing those form shots? And his response was like, I want to make sure my jumper's good. And I said, I promise you, you could not touch a basketball for a year, and that jumper would get back in 3 weeks max, and you would be the same way. You would get back to wherever you were. And I said, what? Because it was so disciplined. Like his plan was so essentially disciplined, right? And I said, what if what you need right now is to sleep in till 9 and be okay with that? And he looked at me and was just like, oh, like he's doing what he did to get him where he's at, but that's not what's going to get him to where he wants to go. And that's why injuries, I think, are such a good teacher, because it forces you to flip your perspective completely, flip it. Your court work, your all your stuff you want to get better at basketball is no longer as important. Number one is get healthy, and then you can flip it again. Yeah. And it was just so interesting to see this look in his eyes, because he was so convinced of this plan. And I just told him that, and he was like, oh, I got to look at things differently now. And it's hard because you identify with, I wake up early and I work on my game, and that's what helps you to perform. You're like, it gives me the confidence to perform in the game. I do the work beforehand. And it's like, yes, that worked at that moment for that time. But now you're at a completely different moment. You cannot play for 365 days. You won't play a game this year. Sit with that first. And now build that plan with the best path to getting you back to health. And in reality, it was sleeping 9 hours compared to 7, and just letting sleep do its magic, and maybe putting the form shots off for a while. And then there's also the side of it. Maybe you need a break, and you need to get that dopamine hit of shooting those form shots, but it can't be drilled into your routine, because you're going to look back and think that was wasted time.
Yeah, I mean, for the sake of having the business parallel, when you are designing a factory, so if you work in manufacturing, there is a rule that you never optimize for more than 80% of your total output. You never want to plan for your manufacturing unit to need to produce 100% of its capacity. You always shoot for 80%, because what inevitably happens is you need that 20% when something goes wrong. Yep. You need that 20% of capacity in order to help you make up for something else that goes wrong, a bottleneck or whatever it might be. Yep. So when you're building a plan for yourself, and it requires you to be the best version of yourself every single day of your life, you will fail. You just will, right? Because there's this quote from James Clear. It says, you don't rise to your goals, you fall to your systems. Yep. And a system inherently is ready to handle bad days, right? Yeah. I only make plans based off what I will be able to do on my worst day. Yep. Because on my best day, I will probably be able to do a little bit more. And then instead of thinking on my worst day, I didn't hit, I get to have a worse day and still get what I need to do to move the needle. And then on my best day, I get to be proud of myself for doing 20% more.
Yes.
And that pride and the extra is so much more powerful
Mm-hmm.
than the fear of not hitting your standard.
Yes.
So I think that's beautiful. I think that telling somebody, because I mean, at the end of the day, like you're at a place where he wants to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were sitting in a position, even as an injured 7-year pro, like you're still sitting in a position that he dreams of being in.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say you're allowed to sleep, you're
Yep.
giving him permission. You're telling him, hey, like you're good enough right
Mm-hmm.
now. You are enough to avoid being too woo woo, but like
Mm-hmm.
you're telling him like, hey, like it's actually better to be proud, like to like be comfortable in your own skin than it is to get 50 form shots a day, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
just better.
Yep. And it was really interesting too because the same kid was like, he was running me through some of his mindset stuff at the start of this season when he was missing shots. And he's like, dude, I'm doing all these workouts. I'm shooting like 80, 90% of my workouts. I'm, I'm putting in all this extra work. And then it comes to the game, it's centimeters short, rim out, rim out. And he's like, and I started getting this feeling like I'm never going to let this happen again. And I told him, I said, what got you out of that shooting slump? He's like, oh, I started, I just stopped caring. I said, okay, I'm not telling you to work out less, but I'm telling you it's not that important. Like, if you check the boxes and you do the things you believe will put you in the best position, let the chips fall as they may and be okay with those moments so they don't fall how you want. Because at the end of the day, like, the amount of control we have is always over exaggerated in our mind.
Yeah.
And I'm not telling people to be victims of these things and their circumstance and stuff, but own it. Like, this is where I'm at. This I just went 0 for 20 from 3. What is the mindset that's going to give me the best chance to make the next one? And not obsessing about how I never let that happen again. It's like, that is a recipe for inconsistency because every high and every low is going to feel so intense. And I just see that so much in young athletes, and these concepts we're talking about. We went on a whole ton of tangents, but I think they all get back to this idea of your development is your own. A coach and someone can't do it for you. They can provide you with what you could do. It's your job to select what those things are. And that skill and that power of owning your development, of really listening to the right people, of taking in outside inputs and asking why, and really being on this quest for your own development and being hungry, curious. That is what will get you to where you want to go more than just trying to follow what everyone else is doing. I think that is essentially the atypical mindset embodied. That is a superpower that I want to share with the world, that we want to, share with the next generation of athletes. And yeah, I mean, this podcast, it's the first step in really articulating these things and speaking with transparency and telling athletes that I slept in today and I don't feel bad about it, and telling athletes that I woke up at 5 a.m. and I got to work today, and telling them that either one of those is okay as long as I know why I did both.
Yeah.
And I think that would just propel kids to, a better long-term outcome in their lives and a better ability to handle highs and lows, ups and downs.
Yeah. That's a really great point. I think that, so I taught a sales class and I was like, what is selling? Right. People are like getting someone to buy something, right? Like, like money, right? Like the Wolf of Wall Street. Like, no,
Mm-hmm.
selling something is getting someone to realize where they are right now and then showing them where they could be and then giving them the thing that gets them from where they are to where they want to be. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you do when you don't have money and you can't buy something? You have to sell that to yourself with your time and your energy.
Yep.
And when you are only taking someone else's tips and tricks for how to get from point A to point B. You aren't being creative in figuring out how to solve the problem of I am right here and where I desire to be is over there. So what you do is you figure out the process with your time and your energy. You dedicate yourself to the inputs for that process with your time and your energy. And the output is a different version of your life. There's no guarantee that it will be the thing that you want, but the guarantee is that you will end up on the other side a stronger, more capable, and better version of yourself that is ready to either hoop, that's ready to be a professional in the work, in like the business world, whatever it might be, a better partner. And the intentions that you do that middle part with, the gap, the chasm between where you are and where you want to be, that is life, right? That is the effort. That is everything that you want. And I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. No, I think first podcast in the books. I feel grateful for having you on, and I feel like it's going to be a fun ride of both self-discovery for both of us, as well as bringing people along for the ride. I mean, we talk about it. Our inspiration is to, as two current pros, to inspire the next generation of pros, and that doesn't mean next generation of pro basketball players. It just means next generation of professionals in all avenues of life. And if you guys are, if that's what you want, tune in. Make sure you like and subscribe on this video as well. You can find us on Apple Music and Spotify. All the links will be in the description. And I'm just excited to get better alongside other people that want to get better. And I don't know about you, Kyle, but I'm stoked for this.
I'm hyped. This is awesome.
Let's do it. All right.
All right.